Hello everybody! Today we'll be making a simple Android app that calculates HCF or highest common factor of any two numbers using the Euclid's division algorithm. Those of you that don't know what the Euclid's division algorithm is, this is a really good explainer video made by Khan Academy. I'll have it linked in the description. Now, for those of you who know how to set up an Android project, you can move on to this timestamp. First, let's open up Android Studio and set up a new project. Wait for some time for Android Studio to build the project. Now, let's create a class called HCF. We will be implementing the Euclid's division algorithm recursively. Now, create a method called calculate HCF, and this method takes two integer arguments, namely smaller number and larger number. Create a variable named remainder which is equal to the remainder when the larger number is divided by the smaller number. If the remainder is equal to 0, then we know that the smaller number is the HCF, so we can return it. If the remainder is not equal to 0, then we will call this function again and pass the remainder as the smaller number and smaller number as the larger number. Now pause the video and analyze the code and try to understand how this works. If you get it, then you're mostly done and can skip on to this timestamp. If you don't understand what's happening, then resume the video. I assume you weren't able to figure out how this works, so here's an explanation. Now we know that the Euclid's division algorithm is repetitive and it ends only when the remainder is equal to 0. So what we do over here is first get the remainder and check if it is 0. If it isn't, then according to the Euclid's division algorithm, we divide the divisor by the remainder to get another remainder. So to do this, we pass the remainder as the smaller number and the smaller number as the larger number. This way the code keeps repeating itself until the remainder is equal to 0. If you still don't understand the nitty-gritties, then I would recommend you to take the steps followed by the code and do them on the paper and solve it. This will help make your understanding a lot better. If you think the way that I taught can be better, then please do inform me in the comments on how to improve it. Now, the last thing to do is to consider some exceptional cases. What if the user passes 0 as the smaller number? The compiler will return an exception. Therefore, what we can do here is say that this method throws an exception and handle it when we call this function. Now, let's move on to the front end and do the necessary steps to get the user input. Open up the project pane and navigate to mainActivity.java. Open up mainActivity.java and hover your mouse over activity_main and press Ctrl key on your keyboard and click on activity_main. Now click on the split tab. This shows us both the XML code and the resultant UI. Remove the Hello World text view and change the constraint layout to relative layout. Now create a new linear layout with the width of match parent and height of wrap content. Set the orientation to vertical. Now click on the project pane and click on the resources and then click on values. Now open up the string resources file and add all the string values that we are going to be using as shown. Now go back to the activity underscore main layout file and create an edit text. Set the width as match parent and height as wrap content and give it the ID of edit text smaller number. Set the margin right, left and top to 16 dp. And set the hint referencing the value from the string resources file as shown. Repeat the same process for edit text greater number as shown. And this time set the margin top to 8 dp and hint to the respective value stored in the resource file. Now create a text view of the width and height of wrap content. Give it an ID as text view answer. Set the text to the value stored in the string resources file. Set the gravity to center and text size to 20 scale pixels. Now create a button of width and height of wrap content. Give it an ID of button submit. Set the layout gravity to center and set the text to the one stored in the string resources file. With this, we are done with the XML file. Now let's go to the main activity.java file. Now create the variables for all the views that we defined in the XML file. Also create two integer variables called smaller number and greater number. Create a public method called initializeViews below the Oncreate method. As the name suggests, we are going to initialize all the view variables in this method as shown. Next, create a method called getUserInput. In this method, we will get the values from both the edit texts and store them in the two variables that we have created, namely smaller number and greater number. Next, create a method called getHCF. This method will call the calculate HCF method that we defined in the HCF class and return the HCF value. The method takes two arguments, which are smaller number and greater number, and call the calculate HCF method and then handles the exception like so using the try and catch statements. If there are any exceptions, we know that they are being caused due to the user inputting numbers such as 0 or -1, etc. Therefore, we will display a toast that says that the input is invalid. Next, we will create a method called showAnswer. This method takes an integer input, which is the HCF, and then sets the value of the text view that we created to show the answer to the user like so. At this point, we have finished defining all the methods. We will now call these methods in the Oncreate method. The Oncreate method is run when the activity is created. This is in some way similar to the main method in plain Java. Now let's call all of these functions in order. First, we will call the initializeViews function. Then create an onClick listener for the button submit. This onClick listener executes code that is inside it whenever the submit button is clicked. Now let's call the getUserInput method At this point, the values inputted by the user will be stored in the variables that we created. Now, we can pass these variables to the getHCF method, which returns the HCF. Now, we can pass this HCF value onto the showAnswer method, which will display it to the user. We are finally done with the coding at this point. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial as much as I did. I know that there are many places where the code may fail. What if the user doesn't input anything and then clicks on the submit button? The code will surely fail because there are no checks for that. I will leave this as an assignment for you guys. I have my code on a GitHub repository. I will have that linked in the description. I encourage you guys to check it out. I am really excited to see your versions of the code with all the fixes. I might even accept your pull request. Well, that's it for this one. Please share this video and subscribe if you liked it. Bye!